To you. I've known Rebecca now since, oh gosh, probably close to 15 years. We met when we were serving on the board, or we got to know each other better when we were serving on the board of the American Harp Society. Rebecca is coming to us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She has been a freelance performer, professional performer all of her life, and has also been a harp instructor, both private and group instruction. She has developed curriculum for school-age students, and she's also taught on the university level, both at Louisiana State University and University of Western Florida. She is an accredited Suzuki teacher. Her background is she studied at North Carolina School of the Arts and at Louisiana State University. She has both presented on and performed at American Harp Society conferences, and we are just here to hear her drops of wisdom because I have had the great honor and pleasure of seeing Rebecca in action with the young students, which is our topic today, is teaching what we call our itty bitties. And she's just amazing with them. And she's also had a chance to develop several school programs. So, Rebecca, thanks for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Mary. And thanks to all of you for spending a little time together about this topic. It's definitely something that we always continue to work on, I think, with our teaching and who we try to serve. So it's nice to get feedback from others and to hear what other people do.
So, who to start off with, like, how do you categorize or who do you consider the very young?
Well, I guess there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I would say that I was really had some concrete ideas about this when I started teaching that are totally different now. Like now, pretty much, it's like potty trained. Great, let's meet and talk, and let's have a get together and let's see how it goes. And then we kind of decide what the timeline would be like because, of course, everyone's different. And that's a good boundary because it shows some self-awareness. And I always have a parent in lessons pretty much until the kid drives. For the most part, there's always some families that doesn't work for. So it's a good place to start, potty trained, and then go from there. But I definitely didn't see that as a possibility when I got out of school and started teaching. I had real concrete ideas, like the young would be like fourth grade, fifth grade. But as I learned more and watched really fine teachers, I started to realize that I was missing out on an opportunity to work with totally clean slate and grow as a human being also by working with the very young. Um,
So, how do you find them when they're that young?
Usually they find me. I'm not a very good business person, so I don't have a fantastic website or some other way of harvesting students, but word of mouth and families that you already have in your realm. And I have two grown boys now, but when they were little, from the time they were wee, tiny, Mother's Day out, 1 day a week kids, I would bring the harp and play for all the toddlers. And of course, it'd always be like H Day or Music Week or I don't know, something, some sort of theme. And then it would become like creative writing in the third grade. I'd come and play. And then all of a sudden, through all these little forays into visiting classes and schools, I would start getting a lot of interest. And that's really how the seeds for building a school program happened over the years. And also just independent teaching private students, word of mouth. That was the main way, I think.
So, after your kids had grown up a little bit and you weren't as involved with them and their classmates, did you continue going into the schools in that same manner?
Yes, yes, just sort of when the opportunity comes up. And then at that point, we're talking about having had a studio for 25 years, so it kind of self-perpetuates at that point. And there's some string players with the symphony in town, have a great school called Grace Note School of Music. So before COVID and during COVID, I really saw the need to align with another place that was more neutral outside my home, not stuffy, had a great website, had somebody managing social media. And even though that kind of cut my lesson fees a little bit, what I would take, it opened up a whole nother part of the community that I really wouldn't have cross-pollinated with. They wouldn't have seen me playing the harp somewhere. So that was really helpful. And also, I've done a few things like at children's museums to be a resident artist for a week or a month or something where I would offer a class. I would, perform throughout the museum, but also have something where I would have a bunch of little harps set up and families could sign up for a time slot. And then they basically 2 or 3 kids on a harp, we'd have a guided half hour together. And, you interface with 500 kids, you might get 2 families out of it that are serious. So it takes a lot to sow the seeds of interest and come in contact with people who are looking for that situation. A
So
teacher.
you were basically introducing, like at the museum or something like that, you'd be introducing students who have never seen the harp before.
Never seen a harp, probably may or may not have ever considered studying an instrument. Total cold call all the way around.
What kind of harps do you put them on?
So for that, and I'd say for about 15 years, I had a little stable of harpsicles. So those were really fun and colorful. And I was really trying to find a way where I could find instruments that were tiny enough to reach around, but low enough investment where I could get enough that were the same, even if they were different colors. But it just it just seemed great. And I talked to them, and I would say that Reese Harps is, and I think every harp maker we've ever met definitely tries to get harps in the hands of kids. But what they did was really, really lovely, and they're very generous for people who buy. I'm not sure how many it is. I don't know if it's more than 2 or more than 4 harps at a time. And you don't need levers to have a harp petting zoo. So I found that on just the most basic harpsichle, I could get a lot of kids started. I was happy to rent them out. I wasn't worried about anything happening to them. They were booger proof, dirt proof, slime proof. These harps were great. Yeah, so I used those for a while, and that's really good in a setting like at the museum or as an add-on to a harp camp, which I used to have a harp camp here in Baton Rouge before COVID. And Kimberly was one of my best teachers because I love bringing in other people to teach my kids. And I would offer a class just for total beginners. So you sign up, I provide the harp, I provide everything, you just provide the kit. And that would be like maybe like ages 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. I'd have 2 different groups. And so for that, I would use the harpsicles and pretty much any other tiny harp I could scrounge up.
Mhm.
But that's not really where my head went once I started thinking about, okay, I only have so much resources. I don't want 20 dying harps. What do I need to make sure that I really serve my goals and what I see as success? And so that kind of refined. I started not having quite as many different harps because I don't want to be a harp expert for every harp in the world. I don't want to own every harp in the world, even though I love them all. I don't want to have every kind of string in the world. I don't have a music store. I'm just a harpist. So I really narrowed down what I offer and what I ask parents to buy now. I think you can see I do have a brilliant in the background because that's really fun when I do play at the Children's Museum or if I
Mhm.
visit a preschool or something. It's ice cream proof and fingerprint proof and weighs
And
7 pounds or whatever.
and we've got a question in the chat with did you use favorite harpsichle stand? Did
I
you use
did. If they're
that?
super tiny, I would use the wooden one that it's called a display stand because then the kids are sitting on the ground, they're sitting on the ground. There's nothing like proper about the situation. It's really more of a heart petting zoo. But they learn that even if they're have the triangle in front of them and they're not sitting behind it, they can learn the musical alphabet, the red strings, the black strings. Let's play it on the other side. Any kind of interaction that it doesn't look at all like what you think of a harp lesson. It's a lot more like structured play at the harp. And then for bigger kids that could sit in a chair, I would use the metal stands. So actually, those harps ended up going to Puerto Rico with a student of mine who moved there with her family to start a church. And she started a harp school at a community center. So every once in a while, I'll catch pictures of the harps in action there. But
Wow.
yeah.
Okay, another question from the chat. Does the Reese Brilliant harp have narrow string spacing compared to your bigger harps?
Oh yeah. Students never touch it. It's just something I use for fun, or again, like in what I call the petting zoo environment, where it's not something that I would even like. They walk past it more like it's like my cat or something. They don't walk past like, oh, I'm gonna have a harp lesson on the red harp. I don't think they even see it really now. But yeah, it is. It's fun. They're really fun. It's kind of like having a golf cart that you can go visit your friends and you don't have to get in your car.
So
I don't
with
know.
the harp festival, when you had this small class, um, were those all new students or were those ones that you like? I'm trying to kind of figure out, okay, if you're introducing the harp, creating these opportunities for parents to bring very young children to put their hands on and this instrument, what's how does that play out? Like, how many of them do you continue with?
Right. I mean, when I said maybe 2 out of 500, that was great for like a something in the society where you're playing for a whole school, you're playing at a museum. But for something like that, I would usually get 2 or 3 out of a group of 10 kids that would keep on. And I think that's great. If a third of the people that I'm interfacing with want to go on seriously, to the best of their ability, I think that's amazing. So that's kind of what would happen. And they would often be siblings or friends of other little kids who had taken the harp, or again, word of mouth. If the camp was at a church or someplace, a school that had put out advertising, then it would be from that body of people.
Mm.
Still not necessarily people who knew me or really had thought about the harp before. So a little bit of both, a little bit word of mouth, in the know, and total strangers. And sometimes there's kids that don't get traction, like they don't have routine. They love playing the harp, but every single lesson is like a brand new world. And we probably have all had those at every age, but that certainly happens when you get the really young, or at any age, but definitely at this point. There's some kids where you just sort of tread water for a long time. And I would always throw them in there too, because then I'm like, you're my good example, you're the pro. And that way they get to go through all the beginning steps and not feel like they're back at the beginning, but still get all that quality time in again with the basics.
So most of these, what you're describing are group settings, right?
Yeah, I found that peer pressure is a great way to get people going. It's a great way to let kids feel comfortable too. And in that, the parents aren't there. That's usually like I have the kids for 2 hours, and I usually have an older student or college student helping me. And I usually have a parent who's a nurse because I'm a worrywart. Like there's people in the wings hovering, but it is a group thing. But then in lessons, that's totally different. That's serious. We do that one-on-one with the parent involved, because the parent takes notes, the parent practices with the kid. The parents really, I would almost say, the main teacher. I'm just there to like guide and to teach harp stuff.
So is
So
that where your Suzuki training comes in, or was some of this kind of just natural for you?
that was all Suzuki. I thought that the parents should drop the kid off. I thought the parents shouldn't be involved. I thought that all this somehow, that the little artist was in there to provide self-discipline. And um, uh, I did not witness that at all. That was not what was happening in my studio, by not involving these people that were at home with their kid, all the time, that I could be using as a resource. I'm not that great at it, honestly, but I do know teachers whom the parents do all the fingerings, and all the note checking at home, and the teacher just teaches harp. So when you come to the lessons, you're working on musicality, you're working on tone and phrasing. You're not, okay, is it a space note or a line note? What clef are we in? The parent does all of that.
That's
I'm
so
not there yet. Right? Doesn't that sound like a fantasy
yeah.
world? But
Yeah.
yeah.
So Rosemary is asking, do you expect each kid to have a harp at home to practice play?
I do. I do. Yep. They have to have a
And
heart, but you know what? That's my job. I should be making it really easy for them to find a heart. After all, that's really all I know anything about. If I can't find a heart for a family, there's something wrong with me. And sometimes that's renting one from a family where the kids have gone on, or sometimes that's renting one for me if I have one available. Or in a perfect world, I do it through a third party. So they're renting from one of our great harp stores like Melody, or I usually try to go ahead and connect everyone with Lion and Healy from the get-go because that's what works for me. And so they end up with a little Salvi Gaia. I think there's one behind me. Or they end up with an Ogden if that's what's available. And then they kind of grow into that. In the beginning, that's a giant heart for them. And
Mhm.
then, yeah, sometimes they're used like funky old ships, because we all know those little harps really get a beating. And, but I want them to have something that has all the bones of what I'm playing on and what I'm comfortable with. But that's going to be different for all of us, like where our comfort zone is, what kind of harp we love to play on, and what we're going to kind of steer parents towards. So I'm not biased, like this is the only kind of harp in the world. It's just I'm one trick pony. What can I say? This is what I know. So this is what I use.
Kimberly, I have a question, and it's too long to type it in. But Rebecca, you mentioned a term that I wasn't familiar with when you were talking about how you had the harpsicles and you would have kids be on one side and they would learn the names of the musical alphabet and they would turn to the other side. Something about structured. I wasn't familiar with that term. Could you talk about that?
Oh gosh. Did I say the triangle?
You talked about that. It was
Maybe
before that, I think.
Structured play?
structure. I don't know. Oh, I have to go back and listen. But what the thing about that is that if it's getting them going backwards and forwards with the out letters because that is a real brain teaser. GFEDCBA. That's like you know, if you can get them to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, if they don't know their alphabet yet, that's really a big accomplishment. And then getting them to think backwards. And even for slightly older students or even adults when they're learning, I would say that thinking backwards fluently, if they're not, if they're a clean slate with music and they haven't done it before, it's kind of a challenge. But I don't know. Does anybody else, did I say something? I probably not making much sense. I don't know.
No, I just thought it was a term that I wasn't familiar with, and I thought, oh, we could explore that a little bit. But I
Oh,
think you
Mary, I might have made something up. I don't know.
that's great. No, but no, the forwards and backwards, that's good. That's very helpful. But yeah, it's kind of like, what do you do with these kids when they're all sitting around at these harpsicles and they're not musicians yet? What do you
Mhm.
do? That's kind of what I think it was sort of.
Yeah. Well, we do things together, but then I think this is really big because it worked really well with my kids and it was really hard for them. Excuse me. But getting them to do something independently for a minute, like, okay, your job is to find all the red strings and I'll be right back. And then I'm going to the next person. Your job is to find all the blue strings and I'll be right back. So meanwhile, they actually have, like, they might just sit there and start picking their nose or talking to their friend or trying to color on something. But the main thing is like they've been given a short task too, and you've shown them how to do it. But even someone really young can entertain themselves for a small amount of time and then follow a simple direction, you know? So there's probably I wouldn't say that you even looks like you get anywhere at the end of a week of that, of them doing something and then doing it for everyone else and then telling us what they did and then showing us again and then showing us on another harp. You're really practicing the same skills over and over again, which is a big concept in the science of learning. But at the same time, are they going to be concert harpists? Probably not. Are they going to remember what they did or be able to teach their parent? Maybe after
Mhm.
5 days. And then you're kind of starting to build on something. So it's slow, it's small. And that's the biggest part of this is that you have to be patient and you have to really put some routines in place for figuring stuff out. Like this is critical thinking 101, like at the ground granular level of, well, if this note starts a song and this is the next note, can you help me find the next note? It's also building that skill. But
Mhm.
does that answer the question?
Yeah, and we've got some more.
Okay.
Do the kids' parents participate in the lesson or sit in another room during the lesson? So, I've heard you so far mention the parents being really involved, but also in certain context, drop them off for the 2 hours. So, can you talk about when you have the parent involved and when they would not be there?
Yeah, I think, well, for my harp camps, like the one that I did with you, the parents do. You know, I have a waiver, I have a nurse on hand, I have all these children of all ages for 2 or 3 hours at a time, pretty much. And the parents can. I think it's great if parents voluntarily sit in the room, but they're not participating so much. But in a lesson format, they are there. They're not there to discipline necessarily. They're there if there is an emergency or communication, or if I need to clarify something, or to say, Mom, did you hear that? Did you hear a difference? Let's see if mom can tell the difference. Let's try it again. Just because that constant feedback of another person, it helps you practice the same skill again. It helps the kids listen with a different ear because when they know someone else is listening, that changes. It changes how you feel about everything. Um, yeah, parents are a huge resource and they are involved in the lesson.
Mhm.
Yes. I'm also not that great at that, but some teachers are really good at involving them throughout, and I'll forget they're there. So, but I do. And then I have some parents, especially like the younger ones. I'm getting people now are like young enough to be my children having kids, and they're like somehow know how to do that already. They're like, oh well, I heard what she said, and I think that I think we could do that again. And I'm like, I think your dad's right. Let's try it again. So, um, yeah, parents are great.
Could you walk us through, including like the material that you would use if there is a specific book or something that you work with these students? You know, I know you've got the Suzuki, I don't know, that's like Suzuki Book One or something to me. I mean, they're not even reading. Could you actually sort of walk us through what a typical one-on-one would be for, say, like a new 4-year-old or 5-year-old?
Sure. So I would say that the first, let's say semester, like 4 months, is probably going to be them learning the routine, how to hold their hand, how to sit at the harp, how to pull it back. And then for the parents have to learn like how to tune the harp, how to set aside time for listening, because that's a big part of the Suzuki method is that families have to listen to recordings. And these recordings are not at all the way the songs sound when the kids are learning them. So there's a disconnect there. So they have to learn like, okay, so Mary Had a Little Lamb sounds this way, but as we learn it, it's going to sound this way. So that means that I've also have to make sure that the family has recordings of me playing everything really slowly, one hand, I'm just playing really slowly the other hand, so that that team of listeners can start to hear where pitches change and interact with each other. And that's relying on the Suzuki Book One recording and the music. And if you look at the Suzuki Book One for harp and you don't know anything about it and you haven't done any Suzuki training, you will probably think it's the worst book you've ever looked at in your entire life for harp, that these people have no idea how to play the harp. And I mean, that's what I thought. I was totally ignorant about it and I thought it was didn't like it. Didn't like it, totally didn't understand it until I saw like how teachers use the material well, and then how the poise, the musical expression, and then also the collaborative attitude that the method fostered from students between studios and from around the world. So that led me to think, oh, well, maybe this Twinkle A variation is actually doing something. And sure enough, it is, but if you can't do it by reading the book. And of course, the kid never sees the book. They know that they have it, they might put it in their music bag, but they're not practicing with the book. They are practicing in the beginning, holding their hand and focusing on their hand position. Or I should do this side because a lot of times they're too small to reach around the harp. So we start, their right hand's resting here and their left hand's out in front of them. So they have to be able to then move their hand to the same position. So there are all these different exercises and fun games you can make where they're practicing that before they even start to find a pitch or play on the string, which can be a little frustrating. But they can always go play the harp for fun, all crazy. But then when they're practicing for their lesson, they have these things that set them up with, I think, a great technique and ability to use long articulation, use gestures, use expression, use finger independence, etc. That's all in book one. And if you look at it again, you're not a fan and you don't have the training, you're going to hate it. But I use that. The parents learn to love it. And then I have some things that I use because Suzuki doesn't work for everyone. I've got some great families that dad's a surgeon, mom's a surgeon, the nanny, this nanny, that nanny, all these different people are bringing the kids places. You know, they're well fed, they're well educated. These kids are great, but they don't practice, they don't listen. I'm not gonna get anywhere. So I use this. Ta-da!
Mm.
It's Kathy Bunduck Moore's Primer Let's Play. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but it's major training wheels. I usually am pretty good at teaching the alphabet forwards and backwards, even if they never practice. We do get that really going. So the nice thing about this is it doesn't start with a specific C, it starts with a C. It starts with the alphabet letters that they can definitely read, because by the time we have decided that Suzuki's not for them, the kid knows how to read. We've already missed the boat of the mother language. So we have to try to build that in another way. And another really fun one, once we get through that, is the Plucky Bunny series. I love this because I just think it's crazy cool. But my favorite part is that in the back, there are songs that are just bass clef space notes, bass clef line notes, and it doesn't use letters. It just uses the actual, for instance, apes can eat grapes. That's a big hot song. Once they can figure out that, because they're also reading the rhythms, they're reading the pitches where they should be, and they're playing it with the hand that they're typically going to be playing with. They're all training wheels to kind of get to the same place, but because I mean, I do try to meet people where they are. I'm not trying to force them into a box per se of you have to be Suzuki, or I don't know. My teachers were really patient with me, and I found that, you know, it's okay. It's okay if somebody's not just one school or the other. Let's build on what we have together. They love the harp. They keep coming back, so let's try to serve them. So does that help?
Yeah, so would you conduct a group lesson in the same manner?
Usually those kids, they probably couldn't do a Suzuki thing because those kids are playing at a really high level by the time, let's just say they're playing Lavender's Blue together. If a kid doesn't know that song and they're not reading that yet, by the time they can read it, that Lavender's Blue kids are going to be playing a Beethoven sonatina because they're not decoding everything the same
Would
way.
you use Plucky Bunny or something with a group class? What are the materials that you like to work with?
With a group class, if it had like a hybrid, like I have people that don't read, but people, or like, let's just say people who are using the Suzuki thing, they're doing that. And then I have, let's just say it's a Christmas party, we were all together. Then I would probably find things that would make a common ground. And that might be Plucky Bunny Volume 2 and 3, because that uses a lot of triads and so forth, builds on, I think that, and I don't know, Mary, you may know the author of this, or someone here, Julietta Ravens. So I think that she has a theory background. I think that the way she bridges the gap between beginning harp and explaining theory is really pretty cool. So yeah, I would probably do that. I used to just try to make everybody read really hard stuff. But that doesn't necessarily work very well.
So your group classes, are you primarily offering that as recruiting and introductory, here's the instrument and let's see who's interested, and then they sign up for private lessons? Or do you
Yes,
have
that is
like, you
exactly.
continue with a group class as a normal structure through the school year?
I have not done that since COVID, but I would really like to. But there's one thing about living in these sprawling southern towns is that these kids spend so much time in cars. And of course, I'm competing with soccer and everything else. So trying to get a weekend time where everyone can get there and people are willing to get back and drive an hour across a town to get to their harp teacher. I could do it online, but that I just don't have, right now, I don't have the studio where it could be to do that. So unfortunately, I don't have that opportunity to offer people right now, especially I think who would really love that the most is adult beginners. That would be really cool. My kids, yeah, that'd be really great for them, but it would be, I think that adults would actually really like it. So probably need to work back more on the group thing. So that's something I can't speak to at the moment, but it
We've
is
got a,
ideal. That is part of the Suzuki thing, by the way. I'm sorry for interrupting. That group is a really big deal, but that's not something I'm able to do right now.
yeah. There's a question here on how long are your lessons for like the 4 and 5-year-olds? How much time do you give them for a private lesson with attention span? And I'm going to add to that, do you do other activities like clapping rhythms or coloring or anything else? Or are they at the harp during that whole lesson time?
It may be, I did mention before that sometimes lessons look more like structured play than they look like an actual harp lesson. I'll use a combination of different things to work on alphabet, musical alphabet, skipping, stepwise, and hand position. But generally speaking, the lesson might be 5 minutes, might be 30 minutes. If they're having a bad day, if they're having a good day, it kind of depends. Ideally, when they're that little, I see them twice a week, and it might be that point, the kid gets really used to it, so it might be 20 minutes each time. I usually charge by the half hour, and I try to funnel everyone through that little music school I mentioned in my community so that I never have to bill. Just like, I'll be here, I'll take them for an hour if they'll stay. But I can tell you right now, I can tell when when I can go a little bit further, and then it's all positive and it's time to go. Come back. You'll have something specific to do in that time that we're apart. And then when you come back, we'll build on that and do something else. But it
Mhm.
can be really short. I've had a few where like, it's not going to work today. And that's okay. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. The family knows they're going to get plenty of time out of me. But as long as it's all positive when we're learning, it could go for half an hour at that age. But I try not to, and I tell parents it's going to be real formulaic once we get to, like in Suzuki, if we get to halfway through book one, it starts to really, like a half hour is going to fly by. And some kids can do an hour. It just depends when that time happens. But for beginning and for itty bitties, it could be a really short interaction. And I'm okay with that.
And Rosemary in the chat has said that she meets with cancer patients and who are staying at a location for several weeks of treatment. They don't have any experience on the harp, but they're interested in it. It almost sounds like this concept and even the resources that you've got could apply to adults. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's great. For some reason, I have found some adults don't do too well if their books are all singing bunnies and bears. Some people love it. They don't care. I actually have a lot of adults now who really like the Suzuki thing because they can see and hear the clarity. They like, and I love how it builds on technical concepts. So that works really well with them. But then in that I just think this is the other thing. The truth is that whatever you're an expert in, that is going to be what you do really well with people. You just sort of have to make it bite-sized so that you can share it and they can run with it. But yeah, I definitely think whatever I do could be done at a much better way by other people once they figure out what works for them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So Tiffany's asking, how many do you have in like a beginner harp group session? How many have you done in your experience, or how many do you think would be a good group to have?
Hmm. I'd say if they're really little, maybe 4. If it's just you. You don't want more than 4 because all it takes is one person needs to go to the bathroom or one person starts crying. Because I mean, they are normal kids. Um, but then if they're a little bit older, you probably could do 5 or 6.
Mhm.
It's a lot, I think, unless you had, yeah, that there's no point. Chaos is not good. So I think control is better.
Okay, I'm just scanning through. We got lots of questions here. Are there any other recommendations, like with books, or you've mentioned 3 that you like to use? I know sometimes with my studies, there's a new book that comes out and I buy it and I try it out, and then I get a little bit scattered sometimes. I mean, just having almost too many choices to work with. Although I always try to match to the individual student when they're really young like that, I think you need to take that into consideration as well. But are those the 3 main sources that you liked? And it doesn't mean that there aren't other really good sources
Oh
out there,
yeah.
as there are, but are those the main 3 that you work with?
Yes, and in a perfect world, I would just be a Suzuki teacher because I'm happiest with that result in the education that I give my students. As there's supplementary steps that I do along the way to, as they play with their local youth orchestra, and to work on reading. Um, there's tons of cool stuff that you can do reading with once they get to where they're like, okay, we're playing really well. They're looking at both hands, they're playing fluidly, they have explored different keys, we're flipping levers. That's another big key and clue that it's time to push in other directions and do supplementary things. Um, yeah, I use the Grossi method. As anyone, are you guys, Maria Grossi? Thankfully, Jan Jennings translated it from Italian to English a few years ago. Um, that's great. A lot of prep programs use that for, I mean, not Suzuki or anything like that, just like college prep programs. It's lever harp friendly, except for one chapter. It has hands in unison. You're supposed to do hands alone and hands together every day. Tiny, tiny, tiny skill building, hand position building. Because I think I don't know if anybody else has had the experience where you get a transfer student for whatever reason, the family moves, the harp teacher moved away, yada, yada, yada. Get this kid, they can't play a thing. They don't know a song. They might even say, oh, I'm a Suzuki student. They can't play book 1. They have no clue. They can't read. Or maybe they're not Suzuki. Maybe they're just a traditional student, but they love the harp. They've been playing for 5 years. They can read anything. Can't count. Have no idea what a whole note is or dot, nothing. So I try to avoid all that by building all that in so that when they do go somewhere, at least I'm like, at least they can sit down and play book 2. They can sit down and do this. They can read this. That's kind of what I think of as success, like making sure they can have those things to fall back on if they want to go down a different path in music or a different teacher.
Mhm.
So yeah, Grossi method, and I mean, I probably have everything under the sun in my library.
Mhm.
It's just I'm really, really happy with what the Suzuki book does. But
Yeah.
I understand
Margie,
that might not be for everybody.
yeah, Margie's mentioning Bonnie Moore's Colorful Adventure books.
Have
And
all those.
yeah, I've
I
used
think
one with like a 7-year-old, 6 or 7-year-old, but I haven't ever used it with ones that are younger than that. I've rarely gotten students, I think, that are under 7, and it was a lot of improvising for me when I did have one that was a bit younger, and just trying to uh, change up the lesson a little bit, so we weren't
Mhm.
just doing one thing at a time, which leads kind of to another question that Irene has is, if you're in a group setting and, where there are 4 or 5 kids in there, how do you, like, one of them starts to not pay attention or get upset? I mean, how do you handle that group dynamic? Do you give them a little play break, or how do you handle that type of situation?
I might just switch it up for everybody. Like, okay, we're doing something different now. And just like change track. I just kind of have to read the room and see what's appropriate. Um, One thing with the very young is that I guess for me, my metric is not like I don't care if they can know how to find middle C on a staff, and they don't need to worry about that for now. I want to get them playing and looking at their hands and not building in bad physical habits of having to stare one way or being one of those people who can only look or can only look here, but they can't look back and forth. So, that focus on them being able to just sit and play comfortably and have repertoire that they can come back and play again and again and again and get more and more musically attuned to it so that their phrasing, sense of phrasing develops. That sort of thing is more important to me than them teaching them how to read before I teach them how to play the harp. I'm definitely more interested in that. And then as far as behavior goes, kind of old fashioned. I'm not the teacher for everybody. I don't know too much about learning disabilities. I don't want to say the wrong word. I am a certified educator. Like I've taught high school history before. I understand. I'm not using the right words because I'm just thinking about the harp right now. But learning differences. There are going to be some that I probably can handle really well, but there are probably some and some behavior things that I don't have as much patience with because I'm not a pro, man. All I do is play the harp. So I may not be the teacher for everyone, but for normal behavior stuff, I think usually for whatever reason, I just think changing it up and pacing can divert a lot of that.
Mhm.
As the mother of sons, I have found. And then, yeah, keep it busy.
And Lori asked with the group lessons, um, as far as where you would do them. Uh, would you do them in your home, or when you are going through this music school, is that something where you go to their location, or are they just booking the students for you?
Yeah, I have a studio there, which I have some lever harps in. And so they have a big space that we do groups there. And then in the past, I've always done it at another location. Like once you get past 2 or 3 kids, it's good to have another environment other than your house. Unless you have a great house, big house, lots of space, lots of bathrooms. I like the neutral environment. I like usually when I'm done camps, it's usually hosted by an actual school or an actual church or a church school, some combination. Or yeah, I can't really think of like what would make me invite a whole bunch of kids into my house now. Yeah, I'd probably, and if it's more than like 2, we're gonna go someplace else.
Mhm.
Yeah, but
And
that's
they would, like you said before, they would have their harps that they take home. Do you ask them, or do you make goals together on how much they're practicing at home? Or is it just, do you give any that type of structure, or do you just see
yeah.
them the next time for their harp lesson, no matter what they've done?
There's plenty of that, of course, but for the most part, they have a list. And with Suzuki, you play all of everything you've ever known. You keep playing it until you're like book 6. You should be able to play all of book 1. And that means that, you're still building and you're playing things quite beautifully that you learned perhaps that were a little more robotic or less, more disjointed in the beginning. Um, so they have a rotation, a form that has things that they rotate throughout the week or the month, depending on how advanced they are. And then their last 3 pieces should be under their fingertips, and then whatever they're working on, in addition to reading material, orchestra. And so maybe it's 2 minutes of review. If they're 6, they don't need to be playing the harp for more than 15, 20 minutes at a time. I understand that, but I'm going to try to structure it so that they've got 20 minutes worth of work that they can do with their parent or their parent adjacent to them. And then if they're 13, then they're going to probably have about 30 minutes worth of work every single day or more, depending. That gets to be where it's almost the kid does have a little bit more of a say in it. Like there's some kids who can and some kids who don't or won't, you know? But yeah, they have to practice every day. They
Do
get
you
home, they have to practice.
do you have special ways of motivating them, or are you really relying on the parents to take on that responsibility?
I'm relying on the kids to take some ownership of it because this is what you do. You're not going to go to soccer practice without having played with the ball in the yard. You can't come to harp you can't show up at youth orchestra without knowing your part cold. If you do, you get yelled at, you do poorly, that's on you. But your responsibility is to be, do the best you can. And that includes trying every day. Yeah, as a parent, I was always like, don't give my kid a Skittle for doing what they were supposed to do. Don't give them an award for showing up. Don't do that. So I don't do that. I don't just, all that's great. Stickers, Skittles, that sort of thing. Playoffs where they see their name go around the room. That's all really cool. And I've tried things like that, but mostly it's like, I'm sorry, in life, you just have to do the right thing.
Does
I
that,
warned you,
that
I'm kind of old school. I'm sorry, this is your job. You got to do it.
does that work most of the time for the kids?
Yeah. And you know what? This has a lot to do with how they're just going to do in life too.
Mhm.
You know, like I might not be the teacher for everybody, but this definitely works in my studio. It's like, it's just your responsibility. You definitely have high expectations of me. So it's a two-way street.
Hi, I have a question, and you may have answered this. I had a phone call and had to step away, so my apologies. But someone's asked if you have worked with blind children, and I'm curious about that as well.
Oh my gosh. No, I haven't, but I do work with a lot of kids who need glasses. That is definitely a thing. I'm always asking parents, like, have you checked their eyes?
Mhm.
But I don't have any skills in that area.
Okay.
That would be really cool. I was on the USA International Harp Competition Board for a little while. And in 2013, we had a blind participant who was from the People's Republic of China. And it was amazing, really.
Mm.
I have no idea how she did it. I have no idea what it took to get her there.
This is Rose. I'm the guilty one. I asked the question. It's so
No,
good
that's
to meet
great.
you. I'm surprised because hey, Turlock Carolyn, he was blind. Why don't we have blind harp teachers? But anyway,
Sure.
I'm thinking about in one of our previous sessions, one of you gals might remember somebody had mentioned like a little device they had created. It was kind of like, I think of it as like an abacus kind of device where they made this with strings and then beads so they could feel spacings of the notes on the strings.
Wow.
And, I didn't know. I mean, I was thinking of doing something like that with kids, but
That would be great.
yeah, but I had to ask you because if you ever come across anything, let me know.
Oh my
You,
gosh.
you,
Okay.
you sound like the person I want to learn from. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
So is there anything else any tips or anything with this younger age group that you want to share with us? And then I think I might open it up to anybody else who's had a lot of experience with this age group, if they have anything to add to our discussion. So is there anything else, that you can?
Yeah, I think and I'm sure that everybody here is really you have to find what works for you and for the people that are next to you. That's who you have to serve. But it's good to have really clear signals that you're sending so that when you're playing and demonstrating and putting their hand, it's like always the same way. Always the same way. It's always the same routine. Everything that you do is this on point that you can change and diversify as their musical vocabulary grows. But when they're starting out, that they start to really feel where the right spot is for them to hold their hands, which is going to change as they grow. But that consistency of communication and expectation and extreme patience and willingness to start back over in a different way and start back over in a different way, or to start here in a different way, to meet them where they are and where they need to be for how you see your success to work with them musically, with the harp, and then also as human beings, because at the end of the day, that is what we are. We're in this world together, trying to make it a better place best we can, one note at a time. And we want there to be lots of goodwill there. So that patience and consistency can be a real rock for these other little human beings. And that's pretty much it, I guess. That's all I have. But I mean, please do feel like you can reach out to me at any time if I can do anything for anyone, um, or clarify anything.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. We
Sure.
really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions, or anybody else who has had, again, a lot of experience with this age group who has something in addition to share with us? Carolyn McRae, would you want to come
Well,
off mute?
I have two questions, and one is more of a response to what we're talking about now. I was a Waldorf early childhood teacher for many, many years, and I found that with the younger children, in terms of bringing them into a new activity where it may be something they've never done before. There are always some children who just will try anything and they're excited, but not some children are a bit more tentative for various reasons. So I found that creating an imagination always worked first. Telling a little story, and there might be a little story about the harp, and bringing it to them in a way that again addresses the more picture forming, imaginative side of who a child is and where young children really live. And then out of that, it's sometimes much more effective to take them into the activity that has something to do with that picture. And you may have talked about that earlier. I was late joining, so I apologize. And the other question I have is, I'm sorry, but I can't help but notice this red harp behind you. And I just think, wow, I love that color. What kind of harp is that?
It's a Reese harpsicle. It's a big
Oh,
harpsicle basically. They
oh,
came out with one a few years ago. I think it was probably one of the first batches that they made. And at the time I had a lot of harpsicles, and it's really lightweight. It's got a pickup in it, and I really almost never use it unless I'm playing like outside somewhere at a children's museum, or
mm. How,
um,
how do you
I took
regard
it on a
it?
river trip. It's had gone down the San Juan River in a
Wow.
whitewater like raft. It's very durable.
And what
It
is the tone quality? How would you rate it?
eh,
Yeah.
if you have zero expectations, it's great. So I was fine with it. I
Right.
didn't get it I was like kind of figured, like my harpsicles, they were cute. Like I said, they are fingerprint proof, playground, they'll bounce on concrete. I mean,
Right.
don't do it on purpose, but you're
Yeah.
gonna be fine. And that's what I got. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
had people
They're
climbing
great.
all over it. It's pretty sturdy. But no, I don't like the way it sounds, and I don't like the levers. But that's just me. I'm kind of coming from a different perspective. When I was growing up, I didn't have a harp until grad school. That was mine, that I bought with like, this, that, and the other. It was a great harp, but until then, I just had whatever was in a practice room. So I can play on anything. I'm fine with it. But if I'm gonna buy it, usually now it's a different. It's a little more streamlined, and sound is really important to me. Like what I hear in my head, I guess.
Because you have more experience behind you now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty square. I mean, you can tell these are pretty ordinary harps. I mean, there's nothing. I got to know how to work on it and take it apart and fix it. And I hate regulating levers. Like Mary, you probably can do it in your sleep, but you really I'd almost rather get a tooth pulled. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's like the really fancy levers. Like these levers, oh no, I need a sorcerer to change to make them. It's great though. I mean, it's not their fault. Reese does a great job. It's just, that's the harp it is.
Mhm. So someone was asking who you trained with for Suzuki.
Okay, so thankfully, due to COVID, all of the training went online because I did some training with Mary Kay Waddington before I had children, went right over my head, hated it. Then I ended up coming across a teacher who got me in love with it, and I got to kind of see the real process behind an introductory course. Then I did all my book training with Mary Kay Waddington. I did books 1, 2, 3, and 4 with her, which also means now that you have to do something called Every Child Can before you get started. You also have to jump through a lot of hoops to get approved to do it, which I have mixed feelings about. And then you do all this, and then you also have to do something called the Suzuki Principles in Action. And now you have to do something called teaching strategies with each book. So I've done them all with Mary Kay. I've done 2 books with Delane Leonard, and I'm getting ready to do book 3 with her again. And now when you do a book training, you have to do something called teaching strategies. I'm ruining it, sorry. There's like a practicum that goes with it. So with all of those, it's not just what the repertoire is and how that's taught, it's the whole philosophy of like how you get ready for that piece, then how you interleave other pieces with it, and then how you preface the next piece and where you go from there. So it is huge, it's invaluable, love it or hate it, you will absolutely learn something. You will put your own playing under a microscope, which is probably the best thing I ever did for my students. And yeah, Tracy is wonderful. I studied with Kathy Kinsel as a kid at music camp, so I haven't done Suzuki training with her, but I know she's an amazing teacher, and they're trying very hard to get more teacher trainers.
Mhm.
So
Great.
I would say take what you can wherever you can. Whoever the trainer is, you'll get something out of it, and you'll just have more knowledge.
Mhm.
Just take what information you can get.
Great. We have 2 minutes left. If there's anybody else that wants to.
Yeah, I have a question,
Mhm.
which I put in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
well, come on. Yeah, go ahead and tell us.
um, it's about connecting. I don't know if Suzuki does this, connecting vocal music with instrumental music, because it's so basic, for kids who know songs. And do you do any of that? Is that part of Suzuki at all?
Yes, all of the Suzuki ones, there's words to everything. And then as you go through your training, you're like, oh, there's words to everything in book 2 also. And I make everybody sing. They have to sing. They have to sing. They have to sing everything they do. They're singing the names of the notes that they do. And then when they're reading, they have to sing the name of the note and they count the rhythm. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I have a horrible voice. I sing all the time. And
Yeah, yeah.
most of
I
them
think
sound great.
I had a student who was like, she had a lot of trouble. She was tone deaf and she had a lot of friends at Fremont High School, and she was doing pretty well in harp, but being tone deaf was the problem. So we started working on singing, and it was really helpful to her.
That's awesome. Yep. I'm there. I'm team sing. Yeah. Sing badly. Just sing.
Yeah.
Great. Well, anybody else? Don't
I'd like
see.
to make one comment that I thought was quite brilliant, Rebecca. You said that the kids expect a certain amount of responsibility from us. They expect us to be good teachers, and we in turn expect them to be good students. And I'm going to use that next time I have a student that said, I didn't practice. I thought that was really brilliant. Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And that's true. You raise the bar. I mean, we have to meet them where they are, but at the same, especially very, very young, and at any age, adults come in. They've had busy lives. They didn't have time to practice since a month ago. I'm happy to have a practicing lesson. It's really to serve them, but at the same time, I think raising the bar is really good. I want them to expect a lot from me. So yeah,
Mhm.
two-way street.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's
for
nice
talking
to,
to me today.
it's really an honor. So thank you so much for everyone being here.
Yeah. Mary, I'll leave you with the last words.
Oh, I get the last words.
You
Thank you
do.
all very much. And I really appreciate, Kimberly, that you take charge. And Rebecca, thank you for everything you offered today. It was very, very helpful and very good. And thank you, everyone, for for being here. I'm glad that people are still interested in how to teach and what to teach. So thank you so much. Kimberly, I'll let you lead everybody out if you don't mind. 'Cause you're good at
Right, right. Well, it almost sounds like it might be nice to have um, a session focused solely on Suzuki. If that sounds of interest, just kind of nod your heads, and that might be a topic that we'll want to consider bringing in at some point. So, thank you again, everybody. We'll see you in July, right, Mary? We're going to do July.
That's right. We'll see you then. Not sure what we're doing then, but we will have something interesting. Yes.
Can I ask a really quick question? This is Rose. This is great that you started us having a little conversation about the blind students, because there are two people now that chatted about such an issue. And I was wondering, how can I make my information available to Diane Muller and to Elaine Saney? How do
Ah,
we do that?
I guess if you want to put it in the chat, if you don't mind everybody seeing it,
No, I don't care.
they
Sure.
can get that information. We won't cut the session off until that pops up and they have a chance to jot that down.
Okay, I'll just put Rose Fortney and then my email. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll wait till that turns up in the chat and then we can close it out then. Lots of messages here. Lots of interest. Lots of people had comments. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the itty bitties are just like a whole segment that I don't know. I don't tend to try to cultivate that. And again, each teacher has their strengths. But there's a lot of opportunity there.
That
There
is
really,
where big kids come
really
from.
is. And I think that's one of the things that, I've become aware of because of you, is the opportunities with that age group.
Cool. We'll have to add that onto your Harp camp.
Yes. I'll bring you in to help teach.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I am going to end the meeting now and very appreciative of the participants and everything that everyone said. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Take care.
Bye.